Welcome back, everybody. It's Joseph here for the last episode, episode 10 of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. We open up with Santa Muerte, what appears to be in the dark. But in reality, she is at the Crimson Club. And you see her searching the room. She looks at the Zoot Suiters. She looks at Detective Vega's family. And then you see her looking towards Detective Vega and Sister Molly. And as we hear and see Sister Molly talking, Santa Muerte walks towards them. We see Detective Vega and Sister Molly dancing, and you see Sister Molly in a sentimental mood as she professes her deep love for Detective Vega and tells him, let's just run away together, let's go anywhere. And as she's doing that, we see Detective Mitchner rush into the Crimson Club and tell basically Detective Vega what happened to Diego. And of course, that sparks a domino effect where Detective Vega runs to his family, tells Raul to take his sister and his mother, and tries to have a discussion with Mateo when Fly Rico finds out the same news and interrupts the club and addresses the club. His initial reaction is to ask for calm and peace, while Rio gets upset by that, grabs the mic, and starts hammering into the crowd, asking them to riot and basically for destruction. And Fly Rico's upset by this, and he grabs the mic back and says, listen, if we do this now, we're doing exactly what they want us to do, to be like animals. Use your brains. Today's not the day for that. Today we bury Diego, and we do whatever we need to do after that. And Rio's just pissed off, right? She wants destruction. She's Magda. She wants to destroy the Zoot Suiters. She wants to destroy the world. As Fly Rico leads the crowd at the club down the street in a march and protest of the hanging of Diego, Rio is already conspiring with Elsa, who's in the car going down the same street with the Kraft family after a night out at the movie theater. They both signal each other as Elsa makes Peter Kraft's foot step on the gas pedal, running over one of the marchers. This sparks a riot where you have the Navy getting involved, the Zoot Suiters fighting folks at the Navy. You have Rio basically laughing at the mayhem as Fly Rico tries to go after her. She pulls him aside and starts mocking him, and they run down an alley where Fly Rico tells her, what did you do? As Rio turns around and stabs him in the heart. And she proceeds to tell him, the king is dead, long live the king, and hands over the knife, the switchblade, to Mateo. It is roughly around this time that Detective Vega asked Detective Mitchner to hide Molly at his home. And the following morning, Molly and Detective Vega discuss how they're going to proceed with their romance. And Detective Vega is so upset and says, this is impossible. We can't do this anymore. And it turns out Molly tries to convince him that they can and they should run away. And this cut to Detective Mitchner with Detective Vega as well as Benny Berman escorting Brian because they found out that the Nazis realized that they have him and they were hiding him. So for security, they decide, well, we're going to smuggle him into Mexico and fly him to New York so Meyer Lansky, the well-known Jewish mobster, can hide him out and take care of him. But on the way down Baja California, they start discussing what Brian's been up to. He says, I already figured out the engine for the rocket ship. I'm working on something much bigger. That something much bigger turns out that he has figured out a nuclear bomb. And the description of what the nuclear bomb does to the Earth's core, but also to any life surrounding it, scares both Detective Vega and Detective Mitchner. And with a nod of the head, it signals that Detective Mitchner knows that he has to do something drastic. And so as they go out to the beach, supposedly for Detective Mitchner to relieve himself, he brings Brian with him and asks Brian to look at the stars up above. And he does that. He pulls out his gun and shoots him twice in the head, ending his possible reign of terror against humanity by fast forwarding the nuclear bomb in 1938. On another somber note, we see Sister Molly waiting in the baptismal pool. Now, this is after an argument with her mother. She doesn't want to be gripped by her mother's tyrannical hold and tells her, "It's over, mother. I don't want to do this anymore." And of course, Adelaide persists and tries to persuade her to do it. And Molly just said, "It's over." And it shows her a picture of her wrist because I guess in the past she's tried to commit suicide to escape her mother's grip. Seeing no way out, she decides to end her life. And she's at the baptismal pool when all of a sudden, what appears to be just her in the water, Santa Muerte shows up and starts talking to Sister Molly and calls her sister. Which bunk bed do you want, the top or the bottom? And Sister Molly, who has always wanted a sister or someone to love and care for as a child, tells Santa Muerte, "You choose," as the embrace. Now, the embrace is just symbolic, as we see Adelaide running to the pool as Sister Molly's face down, drenched in blood. And this was the doing of the Dragon Lady, who just wrapped her evil hands around Sister Molly and encouraged this segregation of not only herself amongst other people, but herself amongst people of who loved her. So the last scene is important because we find Detective Vega come to the Day of the Dead celebration, which appears that he hasn't done in several years. As he stated earlier, he didn't believe in Santa Muerte and he didn't believe in God. And ironically, maybe because he did find out about the death of Sister Molly, he's had a come to Jesus moment. And you see him by himself after spending a little time with his family, kneel down to his father's gravesite, make the sign of the cross, and would look like he's praying. And what seems to be a nice, wholesome experience turns out to be a little ominous as we see the devilish hands of Magda rub up against his neck. And we hear Magda spewing her hatred about brother killing brother and man destroying man. And we see Detective Vega's face just change. And this is how the series ends. Now, what's interesting about that scene is that does his face change in disgust because he realizes that Magda's reached him, or because he's been changed? Or maybe a little bit of both. But up to this point, Magda's seemingly been afraid to even approach Detective Vega. As we know in the first episode, he was blessed and touched by Santa Muerte in the first episode. So this all leads to conjecture and maybe something that they will follow in hopefully season 2. As I stated before, I think season 2 is important. I think this series is imperative. I think it's so relevant in today's time. And the brilliance of John Logan, what he's done to creatively weave in and out the things that happened in 1938 and cross-reference them to what's happening now in 2020. It's impeccable writing, brilliant acting, and this series gets an A+. One of the scenes I failed to mention is when we see bulldozers knocking down the homes in Belvedere Heights as well as businesses. And what you have on one side is the Nazi contingency looking on, while you have on the other side the residents of Belvedere Heights, as well as Detective Vega and Michener looking on. And interesting enough, what resonated with me is how symbolic his statements were and how relevant it is to 2020. Detective Michener goes on to say, all this over freeway. And that's when Detective Vega say, it's not just a freeway, it's population control. And then you put up another freeway around the coloreds, and then the Jews, and then the Chinese. The most impactful part of this statement is when he says they're not building roads, they're building walls. This is not the United States of America.